Hello, my fellow KW stakeholders. Of course, it's Aaron Kaufman, self-titled Chief Stakeholder Evangelist out of Atlanta, Georgia. Super excited to be bringing you another installment of the My 401 KW story, an interview series where we're going to talk to some of our most profit share purposeful associates in KW. Just to make sure everybody knows, the owners of our North American market centers profit share back almost 50% of their profits every month to the associates that help grow those offices. And if you're watching the Gary Keller video that we had running on a loop before this live video, what I love about it most is that Gary filmed that video 4.5 years ago. And 4.5 years ago, we had given back $1.2 billion in profit share. As of today, we are getting very close to giving back over $2 billion. And that's happened, in the last 4.5, 5 years. We've shared back almost, I think about $700 million in profit share. So today's guest is my good friend, Rick Keller. How you doing today, Rick?
I'm good. Excited.
Yeah, man. Great to talk to you. I know you've had a ton of success with building your profit share. I know you used to be a team leader. You're now an agent, coach. So why don't you catch everybody up just on your story, what you were doing before real estate, how you got into real estate, how you ended up joining KW, and then we'll kind of go from there, all right?
Yeah, sure. So I got into real estate right after the crash, and everybody said it was a stupid idea. It's not when you get in. And, so I learned how to grind. It's funny. There's a lot of similarities, I think, from now to then, because back then it was kind of easy. People were walking in the doors and calling, and you used to hang out the office to make money.
Yeah.
And then when things got tough, people got out because they didn't really know how to work the business. They didn't know how to grind. And, you see that happening right now. But so I grinded. I was at a company that was not named KW. And so, you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know that not being trained and not having education was a problem, or that it wasn't normal. And so, but I was so desperate to do well because I had gotten laid off. I worked retail. I worked customer service most of my life. And I had a couple options. I had the state police, I had real estate, and I had a pool climbing wall company I was working for. And I thought I was going to the state police. I was 2 weeks away from the academy. I was training hard because I was in my 30s. So I was old, and going with all these young bucks. And I actually injured my ankle training 2 weeks before the academy, and I couldn't go. So now I've got two young kids and I'm going, crap, what am I going to do? My only option is real estate now. And it's November, and it's not in Pennsylvania. It's not real busy over the cold winter months. And so I just started grinding. And, long story short, I failed a lot. I learned a lot through failure because I didn't have anybody to teach me. As everybody always says, right? I wish I would have known about Keller Williams when I was new. But I felt bad for people that were failing. I would see agents come in, I'd see them leave. And I understood what it was like to not get the education. And most people weren't as determined or having that bulldog mentality that I had, or maybe the big why of having young kids and a family that you have to take care of. And so I started helping people once my business was at a point where I had some time, and I started helping these new agents. They started doing well. My broker said, why don't you train everybody for no money? And sure. And so I realized I really enjoyed coaching, and I really enjoyed helping people. I enjoyed helping people buy and sell houses, but you don't see them but every 48 years, the average time that they're going to be buying. And so I saw that I was having more of an impact on people's lives, and I got to see them more regularly. And I thought, well, you know what? I want to be a broker because that's a way that I can help agents full time. Because no other company talks about passive income or multiple streams of income or building a big life or having a life worth living. Like, that's not what's talked about. So I thought that was my only option. So I got my broker's license. I was in conversations to slowly purchase the property or purchase the brokerage. And then that failed, and they eventually sold to Berkshire. And so I was at a point where I'm like, this is what I want to do. Do I open up my own shop? And I started investigating all the different brokerages and all the different models. And while I was doing that, and keep in mind, I was a top 5 agent in my state for my company most years once I built my business. So as I'm talking to everyone, I know everybody's lying to me because they're just trying to recruit me. They just want to land me. They're not trying to help me build a brokerage or anything like that. And so when I talked to Keller Williams, I heard about this MAPS coaching program. I said, well, that's interesting. Maybe that's a route that I could go. And I was fascinated by the conversation. I was fascinated by the mindset. It was unlike anything I had ever heard before. And I was actually so fat, the old adage, it was too good to be true. It probably is.
Yep.
I just thought it was more lies. Like I thought they looked me up on Facebook and they said, oh, he goes to church, God. He's got a family, seems to care about family. Like I literally thought that the Y4C 2Ts I thought that they were made up for me. I thought the value system was made up for me. Now there's a level of arrogance there. I understand that someone would do that for me, but that's just being real. That's where I was at.
And Rick, let me ask you real fast,
go ahead.
So did you reach out to the local Keller Williams office or were you contacted by somebody there?
That's actually a great question. I'm not sure because I was in the process. I mean, you always get calls.
Yeah.
When you're top agent, you get calls from everybody. So I honestly can't remember if that was a company that I reached out to or they just happened to reach out to me at the right time. Like, hey, I want to learn more about you anyway.
Yeah. Well, the reason I asked that, Rick, is that, one of the big, myths about attracting people to KW is that, top agents have all been asked, many times to come to KW, right? And what we find is that many of our top agents were never contacted by our associates because everybody just assumed that they were contacted or didn't feel comfortable making a call to a top agent. So I'm curious to hear, who you selected as your sponsor and sort of how that process kind of happened. Because, I mean, look, once you start sharing your successes, I mean, think about if somebody at KW that had done deals with you had reached out to you and invited you to KW, what would their lives and their legacy look like had you not done it on your own, which it sounds like you had, right?
Yeah. So it's really funny you say that because there's an agent or a rainmaker in our franchise that I have some business partnerships with that he says all the time, oh, I wish you were my profit share tree. And, he admits, as others do, they just thought I was, and I am a very loyal person. You don't know what you don't know. And I didn't really, I didn't really take calls. I would go for some free lunches occasionally, but honestly, nobody contacted me.
Sure.
And I was rubbing shoulders with enough of these Keller Williams agents and did deals with them.
Yeah.
They just, what I've been told is they assumed I was super loyal and there's no chance I was going to leave.
Exactly. So you're back to engaging with KW. You find out about MAPS coaching. What was the final sort of step for you to say, hey, I'm coming to KW and I'm going to kind of create, my life by design at KW as far as just coaching, being a team leader? Did you become a team leader right off the bat, or did you come over as an agent and then evolve into a coach and a team leader? Tell us about that process.
So,
and you were not Gary Keller's son, I assume.
No, I get asked that all the time. I know you do. I'm not related.
People ask that in the comment section, so I'm just going to get that out of the way. It's a great name to have, that's for sure.
I think there might be a little advantage when I was a team leader, and I would call people and say, "This is Rick Keller from Keller Williams." Exactly. Sometimes I would get appointments because they thought I was really important.
I love it.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
But no, I actually was turned off by Keller Williams.
Yeah.
I was the team leader at the time, who I love. Great. Them. They're awesome.
Yeah.
We went through kind of a KPA process, and it was so weird to me.
Yeah.
That actually turned me off. It wasn't the person. It wasn't the team leader. It had nothing. It was like, this is so weird and strange that I just didn't know what was going on. And so I really backed away from it. I just was like, look, and plus I wasn't in the mode of being recruited. I wanted to own a brokerage.
Sure.
I wanted to be the trainer and the coach. And so the only thing at that time that really stuck with me was like, there's this MAPS coaching thing, but I didn't understand what it was. And so I really just backed off, and I started, because I was running numbers to open my own brokerage, which would have been incredible right before COVID. Right.
Sure.
So yeah. And then, I don't know how much time went by, and I got a call from the OP, and they said, hey, we saw your KPA and we'd like to talk to you. And I was just so annoyed. This is a real story. So annoyed by every brokerage, not Keller Williams.
Yeah.
I felt like they were all lying to me. It was all weird. I was really on the track of opening my own brokerage. And I said, look, I'm still selling real estate. I said, you can buy me lunch. You can come to my town, which was about 45 minutes away. You can buy me lunch. You can come to my town. I'll hear what you have to say. But I'm telling you right now, like, I'm just doing this to get a free lunch, essentially. And so they showed up, and I think I was rude. I was on my computer. I was doing deals. And they came down. And I was like, oh, hello, and big wall. I mean, big, tall, thick wall was up. And, basically they said, hey, we have an opening at the team leader position. How would you like to be the team leader? And I was like, well, what the heck is that? And so we had the conversation, and I still was keeping them at arm. They left and told me that they didn't think I was interested at all. Later on, they told me.
What year was this for you that you joined KW as the team leader? This was
I think when was COVID? 2020 or was it 2019?
So it wasn't that long ago, huh? I mean, that's when you joined KW, was in 2019, 2020?
Right before COVID.
Okay, I thought you were with KW longer. That's amazing, man. That's incredible.
Nope. And so actually they said, well, we'll be in touch, and they never called me back.
Right. Huh.
And it marinated. I was really curious, and I'm always curious. I've always been learning based. I mean, there's a lesson there, I think.
Yeah.
And I called them back. And if I wouldn't have called them back and said, hey, I thought you were going to call me, which again was like another knock on them. Like, okay, well, they didn't follow up. What's wrong with all these brokerages? They said, like, oh, well, yeah, let's get together. And so from there, they explained what the role was, the opportunities. The OP was partners with a MAPS coach at the time. He came along, and MAPS coaches are typically very articulate and very process driven, and so he really was able to answer a ton of my questions to where it made sense. And that's basically when I took the plunge.
And what do you think was the big aha moment for you in that moment to say, okay, this is the right opportunity, this is the right company? Was there something specific that was sort of a light bulb moment for you in saying, okay, my walls are down, I can see the future of KW, or I see the value proposition? Was there something that really just struck you that made it clear that this was the right decision for you?
No, actually, no. So I was looking at two things. I was looking at the liability and the cost of opening up my own brokerage and the risk involved.
Yeah.
And when I was single and young, I was a professional poker player online. So I think very much along math and odds.
Yeah.
And I said, if this is true, because I was cynical and I didn't believe it was all true, the risk seems to outweigh the reward if I go to KW, because I can always open a brokerage later. Yeah. And so honestly, it wasn't this clarity moment where I'm like, the sky didn't open up, no angels came down, there was no singing. I just was like, you know what? I think the risk reward, this is probably a good percentage chance. Let me give it a try.
And how important was the who, meaning the people that were the OP, the support in that office? I mean, was that a factor as far as, joining KW? Was the human element and the people that you were going to get into business with, was that obviously a huge part of that decision to join KW as well? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the MCA was actually the real reason, because I liked the OP. I liked his partner. But I still felt like I was being sold.
Yeah.
And when I got to the office and when I met her, and she was just a little bit more down to earth, it felt a little more open. Yeah. And look, I know these guys really well, and they're great guys. And I've interviewed them on my YouTube channel, both of them. And but at the time, she was the one that I was like, okay. And she was also the one that I learned later that prodded them to reach out to me. Mm. And so if it wasn't for her prodding them to call me, we never would have met. It never would have happened. And so she is actually my sponsor.
I love it.
Because I felt that she was the one that really wanted me, and she pushed me. And if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have been there.
I love that, man. And the lesson here for anybody that's watching this is that, the great thing about profit share, it's not limited to our agents, right? I mean, we have many people that are staff members that are non-producing agents. We have employees at KWRI that are purposeful about this, but I love nothing. When I just got back from Madison, Wisconsin, where I taught my class, and I remember talking to the MCA before the class. I said, look, you got to be in here, right? You have just as much of an opportunity to build your profit share as your agents. And so love hearing that you picked your MCA as your sponsor. I don't know if she or he fully understands what you have been doing and what the ripple effect is going to be from all your efforts. But I think that's an amazing story. Okay, so you took over as team leader, and this is which market center, Rick?
York 810.
Okay, so you become team leader, right? Obviously, a huge attraction of being a team leader is the ability to, also, grow your own personal profit share tree. And we're all about that at KW. We want talent to be involved. And we, look, attracting, building your profit share as a team leader is 100% one of the best reasons to become a team leader. So talk about becoming a team leader, right? Switching the tables, being the person on the other side of the table, talking to people. Talk about that process and kind of how that has shaped what you're doing now and brought you to this point.
Well, it's interesting. I actually am not sure that being a team leader is the best opportunity to build your profit share tree. I mean, I think from an education and a training standpoint, you get to learn a little bit more than the average agent, right? But if you're doing it right, according to the way that I was taught and what I've seen and what I really believe, is you are actually creating an environment where the agents are referring everyone to you, and if they're all warm leads. And if you're doing it right, you're making sure that it is not your name on that sponsor form, because
let me add to that, Rick. I think the important distinction here is that it's not an or conversation. It's an and conversation, meaning, look, we all would agree that a KW market center is healthier and more profitable if it's grown through the agents, right? The agents are driving the business. If they're participating in profit share, they're going to be excited about taking ownership of the market center, teaching classes, right? They're going to be thinking like a stakeholder. But it's an and thing, meaning that a team leader also has the ability to build their profit share tree. So it's not like, hey, you can't build your profit share, but it means, hey, look, if you're thinking about it like the CEO of a market center, you want to grow it through your agents. But look, you can't force your agents to do it, right? So if they're not going to do it, a team leader is going to have to do it as well. But I just want to be very clear that I don't think it's not about being right or wrong. It's about, hey, you have the ability to build your profit share, but if you can grow it in addition, through your agents as well, everybody's going to win, obviously. So, but I love that you had kind of adopted that mindset. Obviously, that's an abundant mindset. And so how did that mindset of, hey, I want to grow this through my agents, what did that teach you? How did that inspire you? Because you're no longer a team leader to now get purposeful about it yourself.
Yeah. So, and I didn't mean to make it an and or an or. I mean, you obviously, as a team leader, you're going to build your profit share.
Sure.
I just being on this side of it, as you know.
Yeah.
There are some new team leaders that maybe don't understand it, and that can be a struggle for us. We've seen it in the mastermind. We go, well, I handed this one off. Why didn't it work out? And there's numerous reasons why that can happen. I'm not trying to throw a team leader under the bus at all, but
it's a training issue, Rick. It's a definite.
It's definitely, both are important if you want to build a market center. But anyway, so.
All right, so you were team leader. Look, you adopted this mindset of, hey, I want to grow it through my agents, right? We know that, look, Keller Williams is a large franchise company, right? We have a human element. We definitely need to do a better job, I think, training on all sides, agents, leadership. But you were a team leader for how long at this market center?
So, I was a team leader for 3 years, and I had joined your mastermind group, and I was watching this, and I was like, this is incredible. This is really cool. And so there was I think I was one of the first people to purchase the recruiting website.
Yep.
And I was so busy being a team leader and learning and working that I never did anything with it, and it sat there. And it was, probably, especially with COVID. I mean, there was so much that leadership had to do during COVID.
Sure.
To kind of keep things together and to maintain our culture while being virtual and being distance. So I think I reached out to Michael and I said, look, I got to cancel this thing. Like, this is a waste of money. I'm not using it. And to his credit, he said, let's do a Zoom. I want to make sure before you blow this opportunity, I want to make sure you understand what it takes and what it's about. And so I was like, sure, let me learn. And so we got together, and he kind of was like, look, it's just consistency. It's just, even if you're only going to sponsor one person a year, it's something.
Yep.
Like, and this is a great tool to use. So I hung on to it. And at the end of 2020, I mean, literally a couple of days before Christmas, is when you and I met for a coaching session.
Yep.
And because I thought, you know what, if I'm going to do this thing, why wouldn't I go to the best person in the company that has done it and learn from his mistakes and thankfully you were willing and able to sit down with me. And I got to get some of that one-on-one coaching. And so that was the end of 2020.
And Rick, let me stop you for a second. You know, one of the amazing things about KW is that, look, we all stand on the shoulders of giants, right? I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for people like Dave Jenks and the McKissicks, or people like Brent Mitchell. And so, you know, what I love is, you know, there was a time I was the best, but now I'm about 7th or 8th on that list. And, you know, I love seeing what people like Nick Avila, you know, Brent Mitchell, Erica McNew, Lee Broman, you know, people like you are doing. I know you were very proud of beating Brent, I believe, last year in sponsorships, but right. It just goes to show you, right? Like, you know, who's going to come along next and do it bigger than Brent Mitchell, right? I mean, and that's what's so amazing about the company. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just didn't want people to think that I think I'm the best. I just happen to be the first. And now, since then, so many more people have done it bigger than me. And that's what I love about KW, is that, like, this is not a competition. You guys are growing my company too, right? So you decided, okay, you know, after talking to me and after I, you know, did my little thing number on you and probably finished our call with, I don't think you're going to do it, so prove me wrong. You decided to get purposeful about internet recruiting, right? And so talk about that process and really, you know, process, mindset, what kind of financial commitment you were making, what kind of time commitment you were making. Talk a little bit about that. All right.
Yeah. So a couple of things I really took away from our meeting and was that you basically said it's a long-term game, and a lot of people fail, not everyone, but most people fail because they're not willing to be consistent and keep going.
Yeah.
And you talked about there's got to be a consistent investment.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to see results right away. Well, that's, to me, I don't understand why all these real estate agents fail at that, because that's what real estate is.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you've got to grind, you've got to invest, and the result of the seed planning business, it comes later. So I'm like, well, I understand that principle.
So the challenge is, right, is real estate agents tend to be immediate gratification based, right? They want to, you know, do some effort for a couple of weeks and see some, you know, get some leads, close the deal. Profit share, especially when you're dealing with internet leads, which tend to be predominantly brand new agents, you know, it could take 6 months, 9 months, you know, to start seeing any kind of financial return from your efforts. So what was it about the moment and the decision to get purposeful that you said, okay, look, I'm willing to kind of have a long-term sort of mindset around this? That, you know, was it that you believed in the future of KW? You know, what was it about this? Because look, anybody that has done internet recruiting as much as you and me know that it's a grind, man. It's a grind, right? And there's a lot of ups and downs. There's a lot of, you know, disappointments, whether it be, you know, losing sponsorships, or whether it be somebody leaving our company that you sponsored, or that your checks were not as big as you thought that they would be. What sustained you while you were trying to kind of, you know, see these results that you're working so hard for?
Well, you know, I had a 10-year plan. You know, I've got my daughter was, I guess, 8 at the time, and she's my youngest. And I'm like, you know, look, by the time she's out of the house or in college, I want to be at this level. And so I wasn't, you know, looking at it in even a year or two. And the other thing is I never focused on the money. Mm-hmm. It was always about the sponsorships.
Yeah.
And then it was as you drill down, wasn't even about the sponsorships. It's how many people can I meet? How many people can I have a conversation to? And you break it down. And when you're focused on that, I just let everything else kind of take care of itself. Now, with that said, I was figuring my stuff out. So I was taking what you had taught me. We talked about breaking leads down, and I kind of tweaked it. We had talked about investing in lead generation, and I started doing that. And I started going, you know what? The KWA is lead with revenue. So how do I generate revenue rather than me just dumping money into leads? Well, I'm not going to get it from profit share right away. So how can I do this? And so I actually partnered with a couple different real estate schools, because as you know, when you're generating internet leads, you get most of your leads are people that are just interested in real estate. And so the way that I classify them and I have a Zoom to tell my whole story in depth on next Tuesday. So I'll get really deep in that. But we actually have 4 classifications. We have folks that already have their license, that know what they're doing, that are in real estate, that we generate those leads for. We have folks that just got their license, are brand new. And then we have folks that are in school, and then we have people that are just interested in getting real estate. So those are the 4 classifications. Well, I thought, how do we monetize those that aren't ready to go, that aren't going to get to the sponsor side? And so using Command, using Smart Plans, and I had a VA at the time for recruiting as a team leader.
Yep.
And when she would get bored, or if she, because you can only call so many people a day, and there's only so many people in the MLS, so you don't want to be calling people, 5 times a month. So I would just have hey, this is an idea. Can you build something, and then I'll take a look at it. And so it was really slow going because it was very part-time. I was a full-time job as a team leader. I actually was still selling. I'm married, and I was coaching. I think I was coaching basketball. I was still coaching basketball. So this had to be part-time. This wasn't something I could just go all in, right. 20, 30, 40 hours a week. And so I slowly built this up.
And what were you doing? Was this all across the country in North America, or did you identify certain markets that you wanted to do lead generation in? How did that play out?
So initially, I just started locally because that's my job, right?
And you have relationships, right? You have relationships that people know you as a team leader, right? Locally, right? Which gives you a huge benefit, obviously, in referring and sponsorship, security and all that great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I got job postings locally because they would come to my market center, and I started talking and having conversation and meeting with people that are interested in real estate, and kind of develop my systems from there. Once I felt like I got pretty good at that, then we marketed doing job ads in just in my surrounding areas in the market centers that I would have relationships with other team leaders, so that I knew that if I sent it to them, they would take care of it, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal for me. It wouldn't be a lot of effort to follow up because I trusted that they would handle my referral.
Sure.
And that's just kind of how I started. And by the end of 2021, actually towards the middle to the end of 2021, I had systems in place. We had our smart plan set up. And I thought, well, why don't we just try this a little bigger? So we went to my whole state. But see, I didn't go real huge real quickly because I didn't have time to talk to all these people.
Yeah. And I want to make a point here, Rick, too, about that. I think a lot of people need to understand that when you do start doing internet recruiting, you have to hold yourself to a higher standard. Okay. If you can't service these leads quickly and obviously do it with a high level of integrity, don't do it. Okay. If you, and I always hear people all the time talking about, well, I spent a bunch of money and then I got a bunch of leads and I don't know what to do with them and this and that. I'm like, well, look, maybe you should have thought about that before you started spending a bunch of money, because the fact is you are representing Keller Williams. Okay. And all it takes is one of these new recruits online to talk to one of our associates that's not committed to mastering these conversations and working these leads, and that doesn't operate with a high level of integrity, for them to never want to join Keller Williams ever again. So I just want to make that point, that I love that you realize that, okay, just from a necessity standpoint, hey, I'm not going to spend a bunch of money because I don't have the time to service these leads. And I think people need to understand that that's a responsibility. Okay. That when you start representing KW online, you got to respond to everybody. And I don't care if you can't pronounce their name. I don't care if they're a burger flipper at Wendy's, whatever they are, they have applied to KW and you owe it to them to respond. Now, it doesn't mean you got to send them the same response. Okay. But responding quickly and with integrity, I think, is paramount when you're doing any kind of internet recruiting or recruiting in general. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And anybody that does this, I'm sure they got the same thing that I got, which was people go, yeah, I reached out to a couple of Keller Williams, and they might have just been job ads. They might not have been in the office.
They didn't hear from anybody.
They didn't hear from anybody. You're the first one I talked to.
Yeah.
Because one of the first questions that we ask is, do you know anybody in Keller Williams?
Yeah.
Where are they at? What do they do?
Right.
And if they're active right now, we end the conversation. We say, awesome. Reach out to them. They would love to know that you're looking to join Keller Williams or have questions. And that's where the relationship ends with us. And
I want to add something to that, Rick. I always enjoyed capturing a lead that had a family member at KW or had, an agent that was a KW agent, or they talked to somebody about KW. I actually wanted to be the one to refer, to contact that KW associate and say, hey, look, I got this lead through my website. They mentioned your name. I want to give you a chance to reach out to them and help them. One, I want to grow KW, Rick, right? So I want that KW associate to then get purposeful about reaching out to that recruit. But the other side of it is this, Rick, if you're a licensed agent and you're capturing these recruiting leads that know people at KW and you're reaching out to them and referring them back this lead, I don't know, Rick, I'm thinking probably if they had a real estate referral for Atlanta, I'd probably be at the top of that list. So I think it's a great opportunity to build referral relationships, with KW associates. And every time you capture a lead that knows somebody, that's an opportunity to build a relationship with a future referral associate within KW. So just a thought there that I want to add is that, doing the right thing is the way you should always be thinking. But sometimes there's unforeseen consequences of doing the right thing. And I love that aspect of it, is that, if anybody ever calls me out on the mat, I have an email folder with 3,000 leads that I've sent to KW associates that had a previous relationship with them. And when people can't challenge your integrity, life's a lot easier, man,
Yeah, absolutely. So, I didn't do that because I was, being a team leader.
Yeah.
I was crazy. And honestly, a lot of times my VA would be the one to say,
sure. Absolutely.
And we would look in the white pages, of course. If they didn't have the contact information, like, well, it was a realtor that sold my house and I forgot about her. Now that you ask, I knew her. Like, well, do you know her name? Do you, and we would get that information.
Absolutely. So what would these conversations, so you would generate these leads. If they didn't know anybody at KW, just give us a brief overview of how long are these conversations that you're having, these phone conversations? And I'm guessing you're talking to the people that are licensed or about to be licensed. Everybody else is kind of being put on smart plans and driven to online real estate schools or K-Score, right?
So actually, I have always been a big proponent in my customer service of face-to-face. I believe you go face-to-face.
Yeah.
And so I actually I shouldn't say never, I might have had a handful of phone calls, but I want to get face-to-face with you. So
you were meeting internet leads in your local market.
If they were a lead A, which I call lead A, which is people that had their license and they're ready to rock and roll, we were hopping on a Zoom.
Okay, awesome.
And there's a huge process, right? I learned a lot. I used to meet with people that were midway through their classes and get fit, but I couldn't. Once the lead flow started to get too high, I couldn't do that. So that's okay. I can only meet with people that are ready to go.
Absolutely.
And so, all the communication was really through email or through the website that we were generating leads.
Yeah.
And we kind of would get them set up on smart plans, and I had a whole process. We had a whole process, a whole flow chart.
let me ask you about this process, by the way. So obviously, providing value. I mean, being a team leader obviously gave you a huge advantage as far as the consulting aspect of this, right? You'd had many conversations prior to doing internet recruiting. Obviously, that played in very well into you providing value, answering questions, and securing yourself as their potential sponsor. I'm just curious, though, Rick, did you ever have an intentional conversation with these people about what sponsorship was, why you were helping them, how you got their information? Did you ever get into that, or did you just let the process and the value and being the referral associate sort of play out for you?
So the way, it's obviously there's so many different ways, and I failed a lot. My conversion rate was so high last year compared to 2021.
So tell me the numbers. So what was the conversion rate? And we're talking about appointments to sponsorships, referrals to sponsorships. Yeah.
Referrals to sponsorships. So if I referred somebody out, and honestly, that's not a number. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. I just know that I saw a number from Brent Mitchell of his conversion rate, and I said, we're beating that.
Yeah.
And I was excited. So that's all that I can really say about that until I go back and look at the numbers. But
would you say roughly of X amount of appointments that you refer right now, and you're still doing it, right? Right now, you're still doing it? Yeah.
Yeah, we're still doing it. We slowed down.
What would you say? How many appointments roughly do you have to refer? Because I know back when I was doing it, and by the way, I was Mr. ADHD. I had a whiteboard. I had no CRM. My whiteboard was called the Recruiter 2000. Had terrible follow up. But even with all of that, I can tell you of every 4.5 referrals that I made, I got one sponsorship back then. Okay, and then obviously the great thing is, Brent takes over. He makes it so much more efficient. People like you make it more efficient. But I was also at that time referring people that maybe didn't have their license in their hand as well, So, but I would say about 1 out of 4.5, 5. I would imagine yours is probably better since we're working more licensed leads and recruits that were farther down the road, and then you were obviously a skilled, team leader, right? But I would guess it's probably 1 out of 3, 1 out of 2.5 appointments for you.
Well, in the beginning, it was very similar to you.
Yeah.
And part of it was who I was referring.
Yeah.
If I was referring somebody still in school, they might not finish.
Yeah.
Or they might have talked to other people. And so, that was low, and I didn't like that.
Yeah.
And I said, how do we fix this? And I have limited time. Like I can't. The first answer was, well, I need to meet with them more than once. Well, I can't do that.
Right.
So. What we kind of figured out was I was only meeting with them when they were ready to go.
Yeah. And let's be clear here, Rick. Let's be clear. Okay. Our associate's job is simply to excite, pre-qualify. Okay. Would be helpful for the leadership team, secure the appointment, and follow up. Right. That's the bar. Right. Now, some people can do, feel like they only need to spend a couple minutes with a recruit. Probably don't have the same conversion rate, but we want to be very clear to the people listening today. Look, you don't have to, you have to simply excite, secure the appointment, and follow up. All right. That is your job. Rick is going to go a little bit deeper with people because he's a former team leader and he's running this really like a business. And a lot of these people, Rick, you don't have a personal relationship with yet. So I think You probably feel like you have to provide more value. To earn the sponsorship. Is that a fair statement to say? Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's all about the relationship.
Yeah.
And so when you don't know someone, you have to do a little bit more.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm getting numbers right now.
Good.
So the average for 2022 was just under 60% conversion.
Wow.
But there was a period of 2022 that we were, almost 70%.
Wow.
And so,
but our numbers how many did you sponsor in 22?
22 was 54.
Wow. And that's what made you number 7 in the company?
I was number 7.
And yeah, that's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, I was actually really mad because based on previous year numbers, our goal was 70 plus. And I thought that was what was going to get me to top 10.
Yeah.
And of course, we had a little bit of a down year with the shift and everything. And so I actually thought I failed. And
well,
I was
and I got to tell you, Rick, man, to be doing this part-time, and you were talking about how many hours a day were you given this, or a week?
Well, it was challenging because once, 2021, I learned a whole lot of stuff. The things that I used to present, the things I used to talk about, they would go long. It would, so I really narrowed down into what I was going to share, what I was most excited about. It became more authentic. It became more about the relationship and how am I helping you?
Yeah.
And that helped the conversion rate. But I actually started doing groups because I couldn't do one-on-one.
That's smart. So you were doing group Zoom calls. Yeah.
So over lunch, I wouldn't take a lunch. We had scheduled. I remember Tuesdays and Thursdays over lunch at the peak of it, when the leads were flowing in, I'd have 4, 5, 6 people.
Yeah.
And I'd get to know them all real quick, and I'd do my little thing. And then, and I didn't answer your question about the sponsorship piece, but, and then at the end, I said, I would end up there were some lunches where I'd be feeling really good because I had 5 referrals, 5 out of 5.
Yeah. And did you talk about sponsorship at all, or not?
So I don't remember when the summit was. We had the summit, because once I heard Brent Mitchell's way where he would say, hey, I'll be honored if you're going to be asked to join a sponsoring agent at Keller Williams, and I'd be honored if you remember my name, because that's kind of how I get rewarded for helping the company grow. That was my line that I kind of stole from him. Before that, I didn't really say anything other than part of my conversation was like, these are the things I wish I knew getting started in real estate. First of all, I wish I knew how important culture was, and you have to be a good fit to come to this company, blah, blah, blah. So I would go over the value system, and our wife for C2Ts. And that was my one main point. I'm like, all right, well, how do you feel about it? If you fit in that, awesome. Then I'll share with you the rest. Because if you don't fit in it, there's no use in us having another conversation. I'll help you find another company.
Yep.
And the second part was I'd pull up an opportunity map, which you can find all over the internet. Google KW opportunity map. And I would just kind of tell my story. Like, I wish I knew that there were opportunities. I never even would have got my broker's license if I knew there was this kind of opportunity in real estate. And Keller Williams, the joke that I always tell everybody, or I say it's a joke, but it's real. I say it's really funny. Keller Williams is the only company that coaches, trains, and encourages you to build a really big real estate business so you don't have to do real estate anymore.
I love that.
And, it's all in line with our mission statement, having a life worth living, a legacy worth leaving. That's why we talk and coach about multiple streams of income and passive income. You don't get that from anywhere else.
Yeah. And, I always tell people, Rick, if all you've known is Keller Williams, right, you're at a slight disadvantage, because I don't think you can appreciate who we are as a company if you haven't experienced, I'll call it the other side of the industry. But, I started at Coldwell Banker, and look, it was a good company, good experience, but it gave me the perspective of, wow, look how different this is. And then the culture of sharing and the energy and the excitement right around, when I walked into a KW office, it felt different. And I think being able to explain that to people, because you have that perspective, is a very, is a great tool to have. It doesn't mean you can't talk about KW if all you know is KW, but those experiences has shaped us. If I wasn't at Coldwell Banker first, I would not be who I am at KW today, hands down. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I always say, when I talk to market centers, or I speak at team meetings, ALC, all that stuff. When I'm talking to everyone, my number one thing is, like, if you haven't experienced Keller Williams, how can you transparently, authentically communicate with passion and emotion what it's done for you and what's great about it? Because when I was selling Keller Williams, my conversion rate sucked.
Right.
When I was talking about what Keller Williams did for me, and I don't mean like, hey, I made this much amount of money. I mean, it was a great cultural fit for me.
Yeah.
There was opportunities available for me that I got to do. I could pick and choose what I was interested in and grow. And all I had to do was follow their models and systems. Like, here's a story that I tell everybody. So we go back to where I was super cynical. I still didn't. I'm team leader. I'm 6 months in. I did not know that I believed in this crap, because everybody's got everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Everybody's drinking. Like I went down to KWRI and what was that for? I forget. It was one of the required classes, and we're walking by Gary Williams or Gary Keller's office door, and I swear I thought he walked on water because everybody's like, "That's his office door," and that's where. And I'm like, "What is wrong with these people?" This is hero worship, but and not that he doesn't deserve it because of what he's accomplished and what he's done for everybody. I'm not knocking that, but just from an outsider's perspective, I'm like, this is just weird. So when I lost my cynicism, and this is the story I always tell, I was in a career visioning class, and I had been to multiple classes, and I'm very nosy and I'm very learning based, and so like that's why I contacted you. I'm like, you're the guy that I see. I'm going to ask you how to do this. If I saw somebody that was a really big investor, I'd say, okay, how did you build up a portfolio of 5 million? If I saw somebody had a really big team, I didn't know anything about teams. I'd say, okay, how did you get started? Why did you do this? How did you hire? And when I was at these classes, so lesson there, don't just go to your training classes in your local market center, travel to regional stuff too, meet people and ask questions. I was sitting next to this kid because I was in my early 40s. I think this guy was in his 20s. And when you get older, these 20s still look like kids, right? So there's this child sitting next to me, and we're about to do the role playing portion of career visioning, where you ask what's your 5-year plan, and so my first question with him was, so financially, business wise, where do you want to be? And he says, well, I want to have 10 million in rental properties. I remember thinking, I remember when I was young and I dreamed big. This kid, life hasn't hit him in the face yet. Obviously, he doesn't know what it's all about. But I'm a coach, so I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I love it. What a great, I love that you're dreaming big. But just out of curiosity, like I know when you ask people that have never made 6 figures what they want to make, they're like $100,000. And I said, well, is 10 million the $100,000 of income? Is 10 million what the rental property? Like that's what you go for? I thought it would have been $1 million. And so I said, hey, so out of curiosity, why 10 million? And very serious kid. He's like, well, I probably should redo my 5-year plan, but a few years ago, I set a goal to have 1 million in rental properties, investment properties. He goes, right now I'm at 3. So I feel like 10's not out of the question. And I remember being like, this child is a place that I'm not even dreaming of being. So I'm like, all right, well, let's forget the role play. And you just tell me what you did, And so I got to hear his story, but that was the final straw of multiple people that I had talked to and asked questions, and they all had different goals. They had different businesses, but they had one thing in common. And that was they all used the models and systems that Keller Williams teaches and provides. And I was like, okay, clearly it works. So why don't I just do it and stop trying to find fault and stop being cynical about everything? And
look, I'll tell you, man, that's what I love about you. I know you did a post the other day in the group, just because, look, you and I, we're very emotional guys, right? And I think, I was cynical about, profit share. I was with KW for 2 years, never even, thought about recruiting. And I had to go through that process. And, we're both very emotional people who are giving a lot to growing KW. And obviously there's been, some changes and things that have happened recently. And I made a similar mistake that you made, in that, I expressed myself from a place of emotion, and obviously, and honestly, a place of ignorance, right? Meaning I didn't understand that there's so many different sides to KW, right? If this is not a business worth owning for our franchise holders, if it's not a career worth having for our leadership teams, and it's not a legacy worth leaving for our associates, then it's not going to work. And, for people like us that are, growing KW and putting our time and our money into it, sometimes we get so caught up in that we don't see the bigger picture. But this has to be a win for it to be sustainable for everybody, for generations to come. And so I just want to say, one, I appreciate you sharing your post the other day and being vulnerable about that. I'm kind of going through the same process, but, now that we're in this, now that we're here, I see the clear vision moving forward for KW, right? I mean, it's, I think we're about to enter the true golden age of profit share, and whatever policy changes just happen will be so overwhelmingly trumped by our dedication to making these market centers more profitable, leaning into Team Bridge, reinventing the office space model. So look, we've been talking for a while here. We could talk probably for another couple of hours, Rick. talk about the future. Talk about, without going into the dark side of, and saying anything, negative. Talk about, and I'm just coaching you and me as well, because, we know that, it's not all rainbows and unicorns trying to grow KW through the internet. But talk about the moment you're in, okay, the shift that we're in, and what's going to keep you from a mindset standpoint chopping this wood, man, and just keep going forward and not worrying about the things you can't control and continuing to build this legacy for you have one kid or multiple kids? You have multiple?
I have two. Yeah.
Right. So talk about the mindset moving forward. First of all, before you do that, also talk about where your downline is. How many people in your downline? How much have you earned so far? And where do you want this to go? Like, what's the long game here for you? What does it mean to you from a long game standpoint?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, I think change is important, inevitable, and necessary, and that's
Absolutely.
every part of life. So,
Yep.
You can either focus on the negatives of change, or you can move with it and adapt and take advantage of it. But no, so my lifetime earnings are about 18,500 around there.
I assume most of that is 95% off your first level, yes, or top?
Yeah, I've currently, now we've had a drop this year, of course.
Yep.
I mean, we always have people, especially when you're doing internet and they're new agents, right?
Attrition.
But I got 48 currently first line. I have a bunch in the system that don't show up yet that have already been referred.
Yep.
And but my total tree is 79.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And look, we have a great saying here, Rick, right? If you build it wide, time will take it deep. And you got to believe, especially with internet recruiting, that every recruit's a potential lottery ticket, right? I mean, you can never predict who somebody might become and who they might attract. I mean, Brett Mitchell looked like every other crappy Craigslist lead I got 15 years ago. Liz Landry, who now runs KW Talent, is somebody I sponsored off of a Craigslist ad 14 years ago. They got a guy named Josh Anderson out of Nashville, Tennessee. He's one of our top 100 agents, has a huge mega team, has 30 people, 35 people in his downline. Got him off of online. So we understand that we don't even know. I mean, all we can do is focus on building it. What happens over time and who these people become, we can't control. But what we do know, Rick, is the bigger that snowball is at the top of the hill, my guess is the bigger it's going to be at the bottom. So talk about what's going to keep you going here. Just keep feeding this thing.
Well, I think like I just found out recently that I've got a team leader, a new soon to be team leader for my downline that was an internet lead.
I love it.
And so you just don't know. Like I'm pretty visual, so I visualize it this way. Like if I recruit a future capper, what's that worth to me?
Right.
And depending on the market center and the multiplier, but I mean it can be thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
If you I look at it from a year perspective. Like if I want to make 50 or 75 or $100,000 in a year in profit share, how many cappers do I have to find, or how many half cappers plus cappers? It's not that many.
Right.
It really isn't.
Well, and here's the thing, Rick, it's how many internet leads equal one capper, right? And I always look at the McKissicks as sort of my guide. I mean, look, the McKissicks have earned over $16 million in profit share, right? But they've only sponsored 33 people between the two of them. Now, these were very influential people that opened up regions and market centers. But like when I think when the smoke clears off of internet leads and we look back years and years from now, I mean, my feeling is it probably takes 10 to 15 internet leads to find one capper. It doesn't mean that the other 14 are not going to close deals and generate profit share. But I think it probably takes about 10 to 15 internet leads to find somebody that's going to be a capper. And we always know at KW, look, cappers attract cappers, megas attract megas. But you know what? New agents turn into megas, and they will ultimately. And it's a numbers game, right? The quality is in the quantity. So do you have that mindset of, hey, look, I don't know who this next person I'm going to talk to off of the internet, but they could be, the next mega agent, the next team leader. And that's one of the things I always adopted, Rick, was I don't know who I'm talking to. I don't want to limit how big that they can think, And so that's what I love, man, when I'm talking to, like if I'm talking to like a single mother, okay, of 3 kids, who has always wanted to be a real estate agent, man, I will talk to them for 2 hours just to kind of get them excited and show them the potential. And look, how many stories do we have at KW with people that have come into this business, single mothers, pregnant? I mean, I'll send them the Empire Builders podcast so they can listen to people like Wendy Papasan talk about what it means to be a mother and a mega agent. So I just love helping people think bigger, and giving them that chance to kind of achieve their life by design,
Yeah, well, that's why I really focus on the two main points when I'm meeting with recruits is the culture and then the opportunities. Because if someone is learning based and they want opportunities, like there's a much higher chance that they're going to stay with Keller Williams.
Yeah.
Because they're going to take advantage of our opportunities. They're going to take advantage of our education, and they're going to be there. But I just look at it as like, if I said to you, Aaron, there's a couple football fields out there, and if you got to dig and find them, but if you find 10, 15, 20 stones that are this color and this shape, they're going to be worth, each one's worth $1,000 or $5,000 a year for the rest of your life. Yep. How hard would you keep digging, and how long would you ever give up?
Exactly. No.
And so that's my perspective. It's just, I'm just going to keep digging. Yeah. I don't know where they are. I don't know who they are. It'll happen with time. And, also I'm a coach, I like to help people. I get a satisfaction out of that. And so even when I was team leader, my motto, I'm not a hardcore closer. I know how to do it. I've been trained in sales of how to close. I'm here to help you. And it's probably taboo to say, but sometimes I would help people go to other brokerages. If I legitimately knew your goals and your mindset, I tell people all the time, if you're not learning based, if you're not looking for opportunities, if you just want to live this life right here and you're happy and satisfied, that's awesome and that's great. Yeah. Let me show you a different brokerage because you're not going to get the value here.
Yep.
And I'll help you. I'll help you go there. That's fine.
Well, and that's what I love about the moment we're in, Rick, particularly for new agents off the internet. I mean, here's what I would say, right? I had my attrition rate was just horrendous, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody I brought in was in 2005 to about 2010. We remember the big shift that happened right there in the middle. I mean, I probably, out of 400 agents I've sponsored at KW, I probably have about less than 40 that are still with KW, right? But one of the things I always remember was a quote from Gary Keller that I would kind of use as sort of my template for these conversations. And Gary said, interdependence, which is Keller Williams. We're an interdependent real estate company that has emerged from an independent, dependent industry. But Gary Keller would say, look, interdependence is only a decision independent agents can make. Okay. And so my conversations were always like, look, it was leads, listings, and leverage. And I would talk about leads because I wanted to know, does this recruit even want to generate their own leads? I.e., do they want to be independent first? Because if they don't want to be independent, if they didn't want to generate their own leads, from 2005 to 2010, we didn't have many dependent opportunities for them at KW. We were just kind of getting into teams. We weren't running Team Ridge, right? So if an agent didn't want to generate their own leads back then, I'd be like, hey, this ain't the place for you. Okay. And that's okay. Okay. Like if you need to push the easy button and go to a company that generates leads and start there, and then you're going to say someday you want to be a business owner, that's great. Then you'll be ready for KW. The point I'm getting to here, Rick, is that people need to understand that right now is the best time in the history of Keller Williams
100%.
To get purposeful about internet recruiting, especially new agents. One, the new agent talent pool's never been better than it is in this moment. And I'm sure how much the talent that is coming into real estate after the pandemic is off the charts right now. Okay. But the other side of it is we're now offering so many more dependent opportunities at KW, not to mention just teams, okay, and expansion teams, but the concept of Team Ridge, right, and market centers generating leads for agents. People need to understand that if you get a new agent into KW who's not quite ready to be a business owner yet, or maybe never ready to be a business owner, they can come to KW, plug right into a dependent opportunity, and either stay there and have the life by design that they want, or eventually grow through our company. So I actually think, the net that we can cast right now is so much bigger because they don't have to be ready to be independent to join KW now. They just have to be a cultural fit for our company. And so I think that's going to cast not only a wider net for more sponsorships, but these people will come into KW, go right into production, generate profit share immediately. And my guess is they're going to have a better chance to be successful in this shift, having that opportunity versus just coming in and having to fish and figuring out how to do this on their own, right? Or as far as generating their own leads. So would you agree with that? That have you shifted some of your conversations to say, hey, look, maybe there's so many different kind of opportunities at KW. It's not just, hey, fit into this MREA box. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've reached a point where I've done this so many times that once I get past our belief system, because I share my screen and boom, it's up there. And I always ask, I say, okay, so after you see that and you hear these our values, and I always say it's God, family, business. Doesn't mean you have to be religious or have a family, but this is how we teach and coach, and this is what our value is. I can tell right away. They'll be like, yeah, that's cool. I'm like, okay, they're not going. Doesn't matter what I say, doesn't matter what I do. They're not going to Keller Williams. And most people are like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And so then it's almost to the point.
Culture, right? Your initial sort of hurdle in pre-qualifying this recruit, not just for KW, but for you to continue forward and working the lead. Your first hurdle is the cultural hurdle, correct? I mean,
and I used to sell them. I used to try to sell them at. It doesn't matter if they fit that mold. Yeah, they're already mostly in. Amazing. And if they don't fit that mold, they are out.
Yeah, that's great.
And so I would always lead with that. I always lead with that. There's no question. And it's true, but it's really true. If you don't fit the culture of any company you're in, you're not going to be there very long.
All right, so Rick, let's give these guys a parting shot. I also want you, do you have a comment section on your side, or you can go back in? I want you to drop your link into your Eventbrite, because I know you're going to be doing a little training session, right? A Zoom session on what you've been doing.
Yeah.
What's the date on that? What's the date and time on that for your?
It is Tuesday the 12th next week at 11 a.m.
Okay, once you at some point drop your register link into the comment section, but why don't you also just finish this with kind of a parting shot, right? Of if somebody who is, sitting here who hasn't been purposeful about profit share, it doesn't have to be about internet recruiting. It doesn't have to be about anything, but what kind of wisdom can you give somebody that's sitting here saying, look, I hear what you're saying. We $1.9 billion in profit share, building a life by design. I mean, I don't think there's anybody listening to this call or this session that doesn't want to make more profit share and build more passive income. But what we both know is very few of them are going to actually do it. And of the people that do it, fewer than them are going to be doing it 6 months, a year from now. So give them some sort of wisdom on what kind of mindset you got to have, or what you think you want to impart on them before we end this session.
Well, I think I was trying to find the link there. I think the key is just, it's our Keller Williams models and system. It's our mindset, right? Like, if you want to do this, create the plan, set the goal, create the action steps. And I'm a big fan of coaching. I would say go get the coaching.
Yeah. Totally.
So it's really that simple. And then, like every successful person that I interview, I have a YouTube channel called Quest for Success. And I built that primarily because when I would do career nights and everybody would ask the same questions every time. And I'd be like, well, I know this agent that succeeded. And then a lot of the questions are, do you think I can do it with my background? Do you think? But the common thread is that everyone that's been successful at almost any level, they just kept going and didn't give up when most people would have. Yeah. And that's a common thing with profit share building. People will try it for a short time and then they'll give up.
And look, you don't have to be a mega agent to know how they do business, right? You don't have to be. We were all brand new agents one time, right? We all were terrified to talk to buyers and sellers. And, I avoided the conversations because I was scared to be exposed for how little I knew. But as we know, Rick, people don't know what you don't know. Okay. And if you commit to mastery and you say, hey, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll find out, you can have high level conversations with people, even though you might not think you're worthy for those conversations. And we always have to remember, you have a full-time salaried person in leadership whose sole job it is to build wealth for you. I mean, your number one recruiting tool are the leadership teams of our market centers. And so, you don't have to go deep with these people. You just need to have a story, find out what motivates them, try to offer some value, pre-qualify them a little bit for the leadership team so that they know who they're dealing with and what their hot buttons are, and then secure the appointment and follow up. And really, at the end of the day, that's what makes this so easy, is that it's not your job to recruit these people. Okay. It's our job. Your job is to simply get them excited and connect them. And so, Rick, I want to thank you again, man, for taking so much time today. You've got your Eventbrite link in there. Hopefully people will sign up for that. But dude, I appreciate not just you sharing your ideas. I appreciate you growing my company too. And I also appreciate, you understanding, as I have, over the last couple months, that we can't become garbage magnets, man. Like this, we can't control what we can't control. And I think a big key to creating sustainable success long-term with profit share is to focus on what you can control, and know that as these other things are happening that might deter other people from doing it, what it really does is it creates a greater unfair opportunity for us. I mean, a shift, Rick, how many people in a shift, when they're just trying to pay their bills and close their next deal, are going to break off $100 a month or $200 a month to run job ads? So I want people to understand, now I think actually is the best time in the history of Keller Williams to do this. I think it's going to be one part KW is about to enter the golden age of profit share. I think another part is the new agent talent pool's never been better, and the opportunities for new agents has never been better. But the other side of it is, we're a sleeping giant, man. And, as Gary said, the greatest shift of wealth and opportunity are in down cycles, not up cycles. And I think it's fair to say agents need what we have to offer now more than ever. And while we've been building this tech platform and our ecosystem, and evolving it quietly, people are counting us out. And I just want people to understand, we're the only company playing the infinite game, and our technology has come a long way in the last 8.5 years. I think people are going to be, we're about to shock the industry and redefine it in the next couple of years. And I think for the KW associates that get that and are purposeful about growing this company, it's going to be exponential when it comes to the legacy you get to leave. So, Rick, thanks again, man, for your time, brother. Reach out to me, man. I want you to be bigger than me. And just keep growing this, and we'll catch up soon, man. All right.
Sounds great, man. Appreciate it all, Aaron. That was just really fun.
All right,
anytime.
Bud. Take care, brother.
All right, take care. Bye.